Hello, everyone out there in radio land, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week. It's that time of the week where we come onto your airwaves and we hip you to what is really going on. We tell you what is happening in the world of grassroots political organizing, locally, statewide, and abroad. We break through the headlines and get to the bedrock, dig underneath the BS. The establishment perpetuates and that we call out time and time again, week after week, and give you that kind of hard-hitting leftist analysis about local and current events that you just ain't gonna get nowhere else. Certainly not on your local news station, and definitely not on the comments pages. As a matter of fact, if you're going to go on those, make sure to put a hat on a hazmat suit first. It is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may in fact turn out to be. So I want to start off by saying, I hope y'all have been enjoying the good weather. Summer has finally arrived. It's beautiful out. It seems like it was like a Game of Thrones style winter. It just was never going to end for, seemed like 10 years. Also want to apologize about the absence on last week's show. I had a community organizing event to attend, and originally I had actually had a substitute slotted up, but lo and behold, they published some classified information about U.S. war crimes and were sentenced to about 170 years in prison. I'm sorry, I'm confusing them with Julian Assange. That's a kind of a laugh to keep from crying type of joke, everybody. That's one of the stories we're going to be talking about later on, of course. It's huge. It's happened just in the last regular days and it has significant implications for journalists everywhere, from CNN to independent outlets like The Intercept, Democracy Now!, right on diggity down to your local radical radio broadcaster such as yours truly. Before we get into that, though, I wanted to follow up with a very important story. If you heard our broadcast the week before last, we focused a lot on the overall overwhelming assault, seemingly coordinated assault on women's rights across the country. Alabama, Ohio, Arkansas, Georgia, again, all passed various degrees of draconian anti-abortion bills. Had dear friend and colleague Maya Van Til on to offer her analysis of that issue, and I wanted to make sure we had a follow-up. I mentioned that, again, the Michigan GOP was trying to push a similar bill in Lansing. Of course, it was inevitably defeated. You know, we have a governor who is very, standing on the right side of history when it comes to that issue, Miss Gretchen Whitmer. And granted, as all of these liberal politicians, we've certainly got some complaints about them, usually a lot. But you got to give credit where credit is due. She's really standing up for women's rights on this issue. However, as Republicans do, and as the Malafor goes, there's more than one way to strip a woman of her rights. And they, of course, have come up with an alternative tactic to do just that. We mentioned on that program the idea of a ballot initiative going forward after, Gretchen Whitmer inevitably vetoed it. And just that has happened. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to read a little bit from this article. This is from MLive. It was published on May 21st, written by Lauren Gibbons, and it goes in a little bit more detail about who exactly this coalition is that is trying to get this ballot initiative started up. A group has submitted language for a ballot drive in an effort to ban abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected. This is the similar kind of 6 weeks law that is passed in other states such as Georgia and Ohio. The group Michigan Heartbeat Coalition submitted paperwork with the Secretary of State's office Tuesday to kick off the drive, which would make it a felony for doctors to perform abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected, which can typically be detected after around 6 weeks of pregnancy. Give me just a moment, y'all. I'm hearing a knocking on the door. Could be one of my co-hosts. Be right back. Anyway, as I was saying, we were talking about this group called the Michigan Heartbeat Coalition. In a statement, the group's president, Corey Shankleton, said the petition is designed to be the arrow in the heart of Roe versus Wade, the U.S. Supreme Court decision that allows abortions to be performed in the United States. The purpose of this petition drive is not only to protect babies with beating hearts in Michigan, it's about far more than that, he said. The group would need a little more than 340,000 signatures, or 8% of the total votes cast in the governor's race in 2018, to qualify for the ballot. The move comes shortly after the Michigan House and Senate passed legislation to ban dilation and evacuation, or D&E, abortions. Governor Gretchen Whitmer has said she would veto any legislation to ban the practice. Which, by the way, going into it a little bit, the main problem with this restriction, the whole dilation and evacuation thing, is that this is typically a procedure that is used, it is a life-saving procedure that many doctors use when either a woman is having complications with labor or there are projected complications that could be fatally dangerous to the pregnant woman. So again, it's just, he's talking about, these so-called right-to-life groups. What about the right of the mom? No, seriously. Anyway, Michigan Heartbeat Coalition's effort is not affiliated with Right to Life of Michigan's recent announcement of a petition drive to end D&E abortions. So this is a separate group. It is important to point out because, again, this ballot drive, they wanted to basically transcribe that exact legislation into a petition drive. This group wants to do something more severe and restrictive. Not just D&E abortions, but also trying to get this 6-week heartbeat bill that a lot of these reactionary states have been passing. In a post on Right to Life's website, the group stated there's a chance a heartbeat ban could detract from laws on the books that already ban abortion, but were nullified by Roe versus Wade. And it goes on, this article goes on, with a rebuttal of, Planned Parenthood advocates of Michigan, talking about how it's harmful, unconstitutional, and deeply unpopular. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the article doesn't really go into the nuts and bolts of this, but here's some of the some things that I think are interesting about this tactic. So this is a right-wing group utilizing a ballot initiative, which, leftists and just anti-corruption voters in general kind of rallied around in the last election to great effect. We got marijuana legalized, we got a lot more people access to the ballot, and of course we took on gerrymandering in a very big way. Now, since then, one of the really notorious lame duck bills that passed shortly before Governor Rick Snyder ended his tenure was making it much more difficult to do ballot initiatives if you're a grassroots organizer. It restricts how many ballots you can get from a particular city or county. It makes it so you need to have a certain number of ballots from like rural conservative areas. It's basically a way to kind of gerrymander these canvassing efforts. And by the way, when you're trying to get ballot signatures, it is much more difficult to do so in rural areas than it is urban ones, just logistically, because you have to drive or walk X number of miles before you get another hand that can literally sign your petition. Now, here's the thing. If you are funded by a bunch of right-wing groups, it's a little bit easier to get the foot power, the gasoline, all that stuff, to go specifically target these rural areas where something like a restrictive 6-week ban could be a little bit more popular than in the cities. And again, easier to collect signatures in that manner. So there is a structural class element to this as well that I really wanted to address. Like, this is how it's set up in Michigan. Not after that lame duck legislation passed, that it is much easier for a well-funded group that is, more or less astroturfed to be able to function under the new ballot system, and innately, it's easier just demographically for conservative groups to do this than it would be for somebody pursuing like a more left-wing or anti-corruption ballot initiative. By the way, we're now joined by Lawrence. Welcome to the studio.
Hey, what up, everybody?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've got any comments on that story, Lawrence.
Man, okay. These bills. A congressperson said it recently, and I thought it was brilliant. These 6-week heartbeat bills and these restrictive abortion bills are being passed, which are an expansion of trap laws. We've seen Republicans do the same type of tactic when they destroyed the Voting Rights Act in these same states, in the exact same states. It's
all connected, folks.
Yeah, we've seen them push these type of legislations and these type of bills that destroyed the social fabric and destroyed the circle of liberty for America, for Americans that we've worked on. And also, let's just be clear, we're talking about a bill that is forcing women to do things with their bodies, because some of the bills, especially like the one in Michigan, you would have to have I think it was like inserted ultrasounds or something that I forgot. I know in Alabama, and I know there was one in Mississippi, I think, as well, where they're inserting they're doing insertions of like cameras and things to a woman's body to do these ultrasounds and things of that nature. So they're invasive procedures that has nothing to do with them medically. You're forcing women to do things with their body that they don't want to do because because of how you may feel about a certain religious text. Forcing a woman to do something that they don't want to do is rape by any other definition. By any other definition. And also, this is what's the difference between these type of laws and the forcing women to do things that is a fundamental right, human right, that they should have? What is the difference between these laws and the laws that Saudi Arabia and other fundamentalist countries, not just Saudi Arabia, but other countries that we say that we're against. Like I said this on my Facebook page, and I said that these abortion laws is Christian Sharia law.
Oh yeah,
it is like we have mullahs and Mullah Thomas and Mullah Gorsuch and the rest of them that are on the Supreme Court and others want to carry their convictions of their religion and spread that on spread those thoughts and beliefs, enforce them on other people. No different from the mullahs in other countries. Now,
I do want to just interject real quick here, because I have kind of gritted my teeth a little bit hearing people like, oh, it's like, Christian Sharia law. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what Sharia law actually means. I think it's probably a better comparison to say it's like it's like Saudi Arabia. It's like that kind of like fundamentalist, like religious fervor used to keep people down and codify the people in power.
When I say Sharia law, I mean it as in the extremist right wing of the Muslim community that is perverting Islam to push agendas that will control, that do not that negatively impact the human rights of other human beings. That's what I am talking about. I am not talking about, like, I understand what the other definition of Sharia law. I'm not talking about that, but there's multiple parallels between like you brought up Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, which is a couple stories I know that we want to get into, is going to execute some moderate Muslim journalists. They are about to execute the women who were protesting to drive.
Yes.
So women who are fighting for the right to drive, like other human beings, those women are going to be executed because of the beliefs of the people who are in power. Women in our country are going to be denied their human right to have autonomy over their body because of the beliefs of those are in power who are Christian.
There was a quote.
I'm sorry.
There was like this quote from this Republican state senator. And I'm sorry, I'm just kind of remembering this from the top of my head, so I don't have it in front of me. But it really got to the roots of like the issue here. So he mentioned like they were talking to him about why the legislation doesn't cover basically egg freezing labs and that kind of thing. Because they have to dispose of embryos, every so often, and it's like if your litmus test, if your standard is going to be, aborting an embryo inside of a woman is a crime, then wouldn't that also apply to these laboratories, to these cryogenic labs? And his answer to that was said, no, that's different. Why is that different? Well, because the embryo is not inside of the woman. This is not about saving lives, folks. It's about controlling people.
No, again, that's the reason why I compare it to the other extremists that use religion to justify their extremism in other countries. This is the reason why I called it that. It's also this and also, some of the states were passing laws saying that if doctors,
like 90 years in prison,
or women who have miscarriages, will be sentenced to prison. You are, and you don't see these. And I know because there's not enough women in Congress, and I would love to see this now if some bills would be passed. If we're gonna pass state laws talking about we're banning abortion, and every man who's caught masturbating or every man who's buys Viagra should also be treated to the same treated to the same scrutiny as these laws. But you won't see that.
No, you sure won't.
One, because there's not enough women in these state houses, but two, every man who says they're for these bills will say, well, that's not fair because you can't control my body. You don't say.
Yeah. Imagine if this same standard was applied to men. I'm just imagining like a courtroom. They're like, man. This man has committed murder, Your Honor. What do you have? What's your evidence? Exhibit A gets a nasty old gym sock.
He just pour out the contents of his nightside bed.
Well, no, it's like codified. It's like it's all yellow and crusty. Sorry,
but under that definition, that's millions of lives. Yeah, that's millions of lives that has been killed. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So the thing is, look, I'm for. Obviously, I call myself a black feminist, and for those who know about my politics, I call myself that. And I'm for women being able to have autonomy over their bodies. I'm for women being treated equal in this country, just like men. My thing is this. These laws are designed to take us back to a time of madmen, of basically of a time where the standard of supremacy and acceptance of supremacy is the standard. These laws are designed for those who are in power to still feel like they are still able to control the levers of power, and these are the death throes of fascism. These are the death throes of those ideologies because of how our country is changing.
And I agree. I think something important to add to that is a lot of these policies have concrete goals that tie into that sort of toxic patriarchy, and also white supremacy, because what a lot of these bills effectively do is, let's say if you're a white supremacist, or not even like overtly I wear the hood and stuff, but if your idea of a better America is one where like the native population, i.e. white people, are the dominant group, well, what are you going to do to do population replacement? Historically, in America, that's always been immigrants. Well, you need more white babies. What's the best way to do that? Make it so women cannot have abortions. And, as a matter of fact, make it so areas, has a specific, criminal justice component, too. If you make it a crime for women to end up miscarrying, that you're putting more women in prison. You're putting, especially in a lot of these states, you're putting more black women in prison. And again, most of these states, if you're in prison, you're not allowed to vote.
You hit the nail on the head with that. And just to add to it, we forget the fact that a lot of the reason why you can't argue again. This is not a debate anymore, is because a majority of Republican voters support Roe v. Wade. If you want to look at statistics and facts. Also, a majority of Republican legislators also support it when their mistresses are pregnant. So let's not.
Well, there will always be abortions for the rich and powerful.
Yeah. So no, and that's the thing. Too. If you don't believe that in Georgia, like Georgia, for example, if you don't believe that those legislators that was passing that bill, or in Alabama, if you do not believe that not only running across the state to make sure that they can get the procedures that they need, but also if you think that they're going to go to jail for it, you're kidding yourself. You're absolutely kidding yourself. And what this is going to lead to, outside of just more people going to jail, it's going to lead to more teen pregnancies of people who are not ready to be parents, but it's also going to lead to more deaths because people will start taking matters in their own hands. And if you think people will not die from this, you are absolutely kidding yourself. You cannot say you are pro-life when you're putting the life of women and the mothers of the children in danger. And then you don't put social programs to help them even if they choose to have the baby. Like, no, like you're absolutely kidding yourself. You cannot say you're pro-life on this issue if that's what you believe. Not in any way, shape, or form.
No, I very much agree. And I mean, that's part of it too. Is like the whole conservative ideology behind this, because if you legitimately, wanted less abortions to happen, then what would you do? You would make sure there was a support system for that. You would make sure there was easier adoption. You'd make sure there was health care for everyone. You would make sure that, there was like proper aftercare for mothers who were, had to go through this. And again, I don't agree with this bottom line. A woman should not be forced to carry a baby to term or do anything she doesn't want to do. But if that was your religious ideology, that's what you would push for instead. But of course, that doesn't happen. It's
that's not what it's about, man. That's not what they care about. That's not what they're trying to do. That is not the goal of that program. That goal is not to help women. That goal is to control women.
That's right. So I think it's about 6:28. Why don't we go ahead? Let's take a little break. We come back. We're gonna switch gears. Hop on a new topic. Y'all listen to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
And Andy Gallion from Death Angel. You're listening to WIDR, no wimps. Punish your neighbors with Forte Metal! 89.1, Michigan is the best.
Depression can take many forms. It can feel like static in your brain, or as if everything around you has lost meaning. It can debilitate even the strongest of people. 89.1 WIDR is here to tell you that there is help and a way to improve mental health. WMU offers counseling for all students in the greater Kalamazoo community at Syracuse Health Center. There is no need for an appointment for first-time visits. Open counseling times are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Syracuse is located at 1903 West Michigan Avenue, Kalamazoo. For more information, please call 269-387-3287 or visit www.wmich.edu/health center.
All right, y'all, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Just a preview of things to go. There are some important local issues I want to touch on. Particularly, there is some austerity nonsense going on over at Benton Harbor. Their high school is under threat of being shut down. I do not like this. Sam, I do not like it. Anyway, though, I think we're gonna switch gears and talk about a national issue, something we've been doing on the show. Originally, we had the idea that we were going to go through the records of like everybody running until like 500 people decided to run for the nomination. But there is one very high-profile candidate that we haven't really talked about in a lot of depth, I almost wonder, like, I'm kind of preaching to the choir of this show. I don't know if like anybody in our listening audience is really planning to vote for Joe Biden, but I think this is important to talk about because, like, you know, if your aunt or uncle or whatever, if you're talking to them, it's like, well, you know, I like Joe Biden. You know, he was the Veep for Obama, and he knows how to talk to working people. Now you might just. Your ear steam will start coming out of your ears, and you might just be like, So let's give you some specific ammunition, some specific stuff to say to your aunt or uncle, and be like, no. So I do want to start with there is one very local piece about Joe Biden that I think is really important to bring up for anybody who lives in Kalamazoo, which is in we had the closest midterm election in this district's recent history, or at least in the history of Fred Upton being in Congress, and he's been in Congress since the year I was born. He won by a mere, I think it was just like 5 or 6 percentage points. No Democrat has ever gotten that close. And a lot of factors could have really pushed Dr. Matt Longjohn over the edge. And you know, to his credit, Matt Longjohn, like we had some complaints about him as a candidate, and you know, but he was on the right side of a lot of stuff.
There were some issues with Matt. Yeah. I would say that Matt wasn't the best progressive in the race, but you can't say that he wasn't a progressive in some aspects.
Oh yeah.
There were the issue that I had with Matt, if I was to compare him to anybody, he was like Pete Buttigieg or Beto O'Rourke in many ways.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw shade at Matt, because Matt is a better candidate than Upton.
I mean,
no question asked.
To say, though. Yeah.
But at the same time, there were times when y'all would have those forums, and he would not answer questions directly.
Yep.
Like he would kneel some of them questions.
Okay, well let's not do some. We're doing like some quarterbacking on somebody who we don't know if he's even going to run again. I know John Hoadley's going for Fred's seat, but long story short. So Joe Biden actually did come into the Kalamazoo area during this election, and you'd think, did he come to like support Matt Longjohn? No. He got paid several $1,000s to come to a dinner with primarily Republican, and spent much of his speech talking about how awesome Fred Upton is.
Let's, folks. Obviously, for listeners, these are not for the listeners of this show on a regular basis. This is for everybody else. Fred Upton is a climate change denier. Fred Upton does not believe in a woman's right to choose. Fred Upton takes millions of dollars from the oil and gas lobbyists. Fred Upton takes a large sum of money from the pharmaceutical industry. He's also in favor of the prison industrial complex.
He very nearly saved that atrocious healthcare bill in like the ninth inning by putting in some BS stipulation about like, you'll be like this, something like $10 million healthcare fund, which like in the grand scheme of things nationwide is the equivalent of saying it's like, okay, we're going to strip everybody of their healthcare, but we'll put some pennies in this bucket for people with disabilities.
No. Here's the thing. Before 2010, Fred Upton, you could arguably say that he was a moderate Republican. After 2010, after he started taking Koch brothers' money, he became a right-wing nutcase.
And after, I'd say that's the way the Koch brothers like mob bosses. It's like you do our policies, we'll give you some money. You don't, we're gonna primary your ass.
Okay, so Fred. So Uncle Joe, Handsy Joe, if you listen to the Kyle Kalinske show, decided to say, you know, Fred Upton's a fantastic person and he's helped him. Here's the thing: has Fred Upton crossed the aisle and helped out on certain things? Yes, he has done he does one good thing out of 10 policies.
Yeah. I mean, that's how he keeps winning this district. Is he's polite enough, and occasionally he will say the right thing.
Yeah, but doing one good thing out of 10 policies is not good policy. It's not a good thing. That's not how this works. That's not how we become a successful society, and that's not how we should be trying to govern. This is the other issue. Not Fred Upton. Joe Biden, a week ago, there was a story about the Congressional Black Caucus. This is the reason why I wanted to talk about the story. The Congressional Black Caucus came out with, there was a story about them. I think it was in the New Yorker, or it was in Washington Post or something. It's editorial saying that their dream ticket, they want either Kamala Harris or Cory Booker to get the nomination. If neither one of those people get the nomination, they want Joe Biden to run as president, and they want Kamala Harris to be vice president. When Kamala Harris was asked about this, she was like, yeah, Joe Biden would be a fantastic vice president. He's been a vice president before, so he knows the job. Which I thought was hilarious, even though I don't have the highest feelings for Kamala Harris. I think she's okay. I don't think she's great. Her town hall last night was meh, but I
will say, compared to some of the other corporate tools running, she does actually have a platform, which is
no. But that's the thing. Like, Kamala Harris does have good policy. So between her and Cory Booker, I would choose Kamala Harris. This is the thing, though. The Congressional Black Caucus said, and like I just said, like, they would, if they can't get Cory Booker or Kamala Harris as president, they want Joe Biden to be president, and they want Kamala Harris to be vice president. And I'm sitting here like, because the reasoning for why they said it is what pissed me off in the first place. She's everything he's not. She's a woman, she's black, and she's young. Did not speak on policy. Did not talk about how she's better on criminal justice, how she's kind of for Medicare for all and he's not. They didn't talk about anything that's substantive on why she should be she should be the vice president and he should be president. And also this coded language that we keep hearing about electability. Yeah. And I want to talk, because I really am getting pissed off when I hear Democrats talk about electability, because if we're talking about electability, and a lot of times it's coded language for we need to go with the corporate person, or we need to go with the establishment person. Because I remember back in 2007, 2008, people saying the country's not going to vote for a black guy. They're not going to vote for a black guy with an African name, and the country voted for him twice. They're not going to vote for a woman. And all this stuff, or they're not going to vote for a socialist, and Bernie Sanders closed a 60-point lead. Like, they're not going to vote for Trump. Trump's a horrible human being, and Trump beat Hillary Clinton.
Well, you know what I think Joe Biden represents is, because there is a history behind this. So the leftists in the Democratic Party got walloped. By Nixon and the Reagan Revolution. There's almost like this weird trauma a lot of older establishment Democrats have. It's like, you go too far to the left, Reagan will take over everything. But keep in mind, like, the centrist strategy that they've been holding on to since Clinton got into office, that only worked once, and it barely worked. Bill Clinton beating George Herbert Walker Bush in the 90s, like, don't forget, it wasn't like a landslide victory. A lot of people would say correctly, the spoiler effect from Ross Perot really helped Bill Clinton get in. So it was never a mandate. And in fact, the most successful candidate they had after Clinton was the one that people thought was the least electable, i.e. Barack Obama.
Yeah, no, yeah. And that's my point that made me angry about the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm like, Congressional Black Caucus. Mm-hmm. I hope one day that you listen to this, and I really do. There are 24 candidates that are running for president.
Send them the video.
Okay. Yeah, send this video to the Congressional Black Caucus, especially this segment. There's 24 candidates that's running. One of those candidates marched with Martin Luther King. One of those candidates back in the 60s got arrested fighting segregation in Chicago. One of those candidates has a legacy of fighting on the right side of policies when it comes to the African American community. In comparison to Joe Biden, who eulogized Strom Thurmond,
flip-flopped on segregation of busing.
No, he said no, but that's my point.
Yeah.
He said that he was great friends with a segregationist, like he was great friends with someone who was a segregationist. He argued that segregated buses was a good thing. He wrote the crime bill and now denies the fact that the crime bill negatively affected the African American community.
And even Bill Clinton has come out and said, yes, that created mass incarceration.
And Bill Clinton signed the damn legislation. Okay, low-hanging fruit. His whole thing with Anita Hill. He did a non-apology to Anita Hill years after he was in control of the entire thing, the entire thing with Anita Hill, and he would not let the people who could verify her story, he would not allow them to speak. So that's low-hanging fruit. I'm not even going to talk about how he voted for the credit card bill, which also massively exploited and destroyed the lives of black people. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that he voted for the Iraq War or how he advocated for it. I'm not going to talk about the fact that he was to the right of George W. Bush when it came to war.
Yes, indeed.
I'm not even like, this is specifically for black folks. And also, I need for liberals, and this is my thing about liberals, especially older liberals and also younger liberals, I need y'all to understand. President Obama did not pick Joe Biden because Joe Biden was going to help him with the black vote. No. That is a misconception. If you hear that in mainstream media, they are lying to you.
I'm glad you're hitting on this
because Joe Biden was picked so that white people will feel comfortable voting for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
That's it.
Keep in mind, when they were running against each other in the primary, Joe came out and said he referred to Obama as, he's clean, he's well spoken, kind of like the way your slightly racist old uncle would talk about Barack Obama.
Dog, and that's the thing. That's the thing that makes me. Okay, so let me be fair, because we're gonna be fair. Has Joe Biden done policies has he voted for policies or has advocated for policies that has positively affected black folks? Yes, I will give you that. The ones that matter, the policies that we speak about, the ones that negatively affect us till this day, he denies them hurting our community.
Oh, and not even thinking about expand it out, like what he did for mass incarceration, like the way he let credit card companies get away with really
ripping off black folks.
Yes,
legal loan sharking. That's what it was the blueprint for why we have legal loan sharking now. And then to deny that or to not see how it negatively affected people who are disenfranchised is obscene. It's ignorant. It also means that you are out of touch with the average American. And I
will say he did apologize for that one, which I thought was kind of funny because he doesn't seem to know how to apologize for any of his other bad decisions. So I thought it was interesting. Like, that is the one thing he actually gave a halfway decent apology for.
And also, when you talk about the 94 crime bill, please listen for the weasel words that people use. This is the thing why Simone Sanders and Joe Biden's answer pissed me off. Because, yes, that bill affected federal prisons. Federal prisons are not state prisons. And so on that language, yes, it did not affect mass incarceration. This is the part they're leaving out. The bill had a $3 billion voucher / incentive for states to craft 3-strike legislation that will put more people in jail. To deny the fact that incentive was designed for prisoners, private and public prisons, to lock up more people so that they can get more money from the federal government means that you are denying reality. And when you're denying reality, then you are denying the humanity of those that are being affected.
Yeah.
So I cannot feel comfortable with someone who's denying facts because they wrote the legislation and it's a part of their legacy.
Yeah. And also, like, a very... for a guy who launched his campaign talking about the events of Charlottesville and invoking, like, Heather Heyer, he talks about how, like, oh, we just need to reach out to the right and reach across the aisle and all that stuff. It's like, Joe, a big problem is that there are elements of the Republican Party and, you know, right-wing politics in America overall that are getting into bed with outright fascists. That you can't reach across the aisle to somebody who's running for Senate in Kekistan or whatever.
No. This is the other thing about Joe this is the other thing about Uncle Joe that bothers me. That bothers me the most is that when you are given new information, you're supposed to learn and adjust. When he's giving new information on something that he's done in the past, he does not pivot unless he has been dragged through the mud to do so.
You gotta public pressure the hell out of him.
Yeah. So him being for a public fence, him being for a border fence, very similar to Hillary Clinton being for a border fence, him not being for. Okay, so let's say you're not. So let's look on the other side of this coin. Let's say you are for. He still supports the bill. Okay, fair enough. What policies do you have to fix said problems in the bill? Because under our current president, the Violence Against Women's Act expired under President Trump when they had control of Congress and the Senate and the White House and the Supreme Court. Are you going to reinstate the Violence Against Women's Act as a separate thing, as a separate issue? You said that the bill, the 94 crime bill, had assault weapons ban. It had an armor-piercing rounds ban. I think it also had a silencer ban or things of that nature. Are you going to expand on other gun reform issues that help protect our citizens? Okay, you and President Obama, I'll give you some credit. During the last 2 years of y'all administration, y'all were commuting sentences of nonviolent drug offenders. Are you going to be for legalization of marijuana? Are you going to expand on expunging these people's records and getting more people out? Are you for health care for them or free college and education so that they can be productive citizens? Joe Biden's not for universal health care. He's not for free college and tuition. And I don't think he's going to keep commuting people's sentences for nonviolent drug offenses when he was for the war on drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have not learned from the last... Oh, no, the other thing that makes me so angry. Climate change. We talk about climate change.
Oh man, oof.
And pollution, climate change. How we have to have 12 years to change what we're doing, or we will have catastrophic climate change. How in the poorest communities, in black and brown communities, we are affected by pollution at a higher rate than the white population. That's from an international study. That was from the international study that was in the UN. That was by a national study that just came out, I think 2 months ago. Democracy Now! Talked about it. Are you going to be aggressive in fighting these changes so that Americans will have a better way of life? And those who are disenfranchised, black and brown people who are living in those type of areas, will you give them federal grants or ways to help their infrastructure so they won't be negatively affected by climate change? Well, you're not for a Green New Deal. You're for a moderate measure.
Well, and he did like this very conservative tactic of like, and this is literally what you would hear on the floor when AOC was pushing the Green New Deal. All these Republicans were like, well, you're going to put all the coal miners out of work, blah, blah, blah. Joe Biden said that. It's like, oh, we've got a lot of like pipeline engineers and oil people work in the oil industry, and we don't want to put them out of work. So we got to find a middle ground.
No. Yeah, you called it a catastrophic. You called it a catastrophic emergency. There's nothing pragmatic about there's nothing pragmatic about a middle ground approach to a catastrophe. If your house is on fire, your family's in the house, are you going to tell your family, hey guys, we need to find a moderate solution, a middle ground solution to this fire? To this fire that's about to burn down my house and the rest of the block. No, you're not. And the fact that, and these are the things that policy-wise you can address. These are the things that you can address from the bully pulpit. You've been president. I mean, you've been vice president. You could have been doing these things, even though under your administration, y'all opened the Arctic to drilling 3 different times.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, this is the thing that, as the resident black person here, and as a person who likes a good portion of the people who are on the Congressional Black Caucus, to bring this full circle, why it was absolutely asinine to read the story and to see that if they couldn't get Kamala Harris or Cory Booker, that they would want Joe Biden as president and they would want Kamala Harris to be vice president. Because I'm thinking about all of these different issues that negatively affect my people, and I'm like, he's not good on them.
No,
any of them. Yet that's who you're picking.
Yeah, exactly. And again, a guy who was literally only his association with Barack Obama was literally like to triangulate with people that thought like vaguely racist white voters, you know. And
it's white voters that were uncomfortable voting for a black guy.
Exactly.
That's what it is. It's the, if you know anything that's going on about Old Town Road, it is the Old Town Road of that was in 2008. That was the Old Town Road of 2008.
That's a good analogy.
It really is. Mm-hmm. The rest of the people who should be rocking with this are not rocking with it. So we're gonna get an old white guy who they do rock with. Hop on the bandwagon.
Joe Biden is Billy Ray Cyrus in this analogy.
He really is.
And by the way, real quick, just historical trivia. Most cowboys were actually black and Latinx, just because it was one of those. Being a cowboy was hard. Most hard. White people didn't want to do
it. I mean, like, if we're gonna be honest, and also, can we keep it real? Country music was created by black folks. Like, can we? Like, there's an overwhelming majority. The overwhelming majority of music in America was created by black folks. Country is included in that list.
Yeah.
So let's not. Can we not?
So there is one other thing I wanted to hit on, especially, because I think honestly there is a lot, like, Joe's big draw is his association with President Barack Obama, and I wanted to bring home the fact that, like, Joe Biden's presence in that administration, to my mind, it made Barack Obama a worse president. It did. And here is
it also Joe Lieberman being his mentor was also because Joe Lieberman's the reason why we didn't have a public option in the Affordable Care Act. But
and I wanted to give a really concrete example. So we talk a lot on the show about the disappointment of Barack Obama kind of campaign, not necessarily as an anti-war candidate, but as like a candidate who would reel back the interventionist wars that were such a disaster under George W. Bush. There's this book I always go back to. I recommend it to everybody, National Security and Double Government. And the whole thesis of the book revolves around this question. Why was the foreign policy of the Barack Obama administration so close to George W. Bush despite him campaigning against it? And there's this anecdote from that book that I think is really important when you think about Joe Biden. Barack Obama's in the Oval Office. He's talking about withdrawing the troops from Afghanistan. And I really do think, like, early in his administration, he actually did, in a sincere way, want to reel back our interventionism. And they talk about that in this book. The generals basically said to him, you know, Barack Obama's like, I want to withdraw the troops. And the generals offer him two proposals. We can either add a hell of a lot more troops or slightly less more troops. Barack Obama storms out of the Oval Office. He's kind of pissed off, you know. Joe Biden goes to talk to him. Barack Obama comes back in. He's like, less more troops. The particularly hawkish and particularly interventionist programs that Barack Obama followed were explicitly, most of them, because Joe Biden was on his shoulder saying, prosecute those whistleblowers. Yes, invest in the drone program. Do this, do that.
My issue with that is not only the fact that, one, you get what you pay for, because he was to the right of George W. Bush when it came to the Iraq and Afghanistan interventions, but also I'm upset with that story. I'm more upset with President Obama, because if I was President Obama, and I would, and maybe it's just me, but if I was President Obama, I would. Maybe it's just because of the way I'm raised. I'm like, I asked y'all for. I want to do a troop withdrawal. You said more troops or less than more troops. Okay, who's the head general? Who's the second in command after you? Who's the third in command after you? I will fire all three of you if you do not give me what I want.
Oh, yeah.
By you have 2.5 days, or I was like, you have 2 days. In those 2 days, either you give me a troop withdrawal or you give me your resignation letters. If I was president, I'd be like, I don't think y'all understand me. We are wasting more money on these wars. And we're wasting money on these wars that could be put to fix our country. Yeah. So please, I was like, I'm asking y'all nicely, give me a full truth withdrawal plan, or give me your resignation letters.
I mean, I will say, you know, to not necessarily to defend Obama, but just like, I think it is important to point out that, you know, military industrial complex it's real. That for a reason, you know. It's you know, I'd say best of luck if we actually get a progressive president in, like Bernie, like Warren or Tulsi. Well, actually, Warren's kind of okay with the military-industrial complex. Bernie and Tulsi, the only two who are really questioning that stuff. If either of them become president, Wall Street is going to look like a mini boss in comparison. Like the military-industrial complex, that's like the final boss. No, that's like the secret final boss you get at the end once you've beaten the game, and you got to beat the one with like all the increased stats.
It's
the extra hard mode. That's what that is.
It's a Kuma in the original Street Fighter, the original Street Fighter 2. Like if you for those who do not know what I'm talking about, if you played Street Fighter and you beat. You got, I think you had to get 3 perfect matches. You had to get 3 perfect matches, and you had to do those 3 perfect stages, and you had to get 3 perfect matches. And if you beat Bison, then you get a Kuma, who was completely broken, who completely broke the game. Here's the thing. This is the thing that, but again, this is the reason why I'm pissed at the Congressional Black Caucus. I get that y'all like Joe. I get that y'all have worked with him for years. I get that. And I get that. And also, let's be fair. Polling has shown that he's in first place. When you look at a good portion of the polling, some of that is real. Some of those polls are complete BS because they don't poll anybody who's under the age of 50. Some of those are fake, but a good portion of that support is real, and it's older voters. Here's the problem. The same problem that Joe has, Hillary has, and it's worse. And if you don't don't think it's work, just because he has Simone Sanders on his side does not, and just because he has some black staffers on his side does not mean he's going to push issues that help our community.
Again, and we had a lot of rightful criticism about Clinton back in 2016, but like I can't think of any issue that he's not at least as bad or worse on. Like
none. There's literally. I can't literally. Yeah, I'm with you. I cannot think of a policy that she pushed or that he is for. That is not worse. But that was just one story. That was one story. We do need to talk about some other local stories. Oh wait, it's 7. We gotta take a break.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll switch gears again. Y'all are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
This is George W. Bush, and you're listening to 89.1 WIDR, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Kalamazoo. You know what you're listening to, Kalamazoo, Michigan, man. What are you, stupid?
Is your RSO looking for new ways to get its name out to Western's campus and the greater Kalamazoo community? Why not use the wider airwaves? For more information on how we can work together to promote your organization and events, go to widrfm.org and click on the Airtime and Sponsorship page under the Support tab.
Yo, we're back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. I want to talk about the story about some of our neighbors to the west over at Benton Harbor. Kudos or thanks to Nora for sending this story to us in the thread. I wasn't aware of this, and it made me so damn furious after I read it. Basically, the headline here, this is from ABC 57. That's the affiliate that's there down in kind of South Bend, St. Joe, Benton Harbor area. Benton Harbor schools urgently requesting that Governor Whitmer reconsider plan. Oh, that sounds ominous. What is this plan? Well, let me tell you what this plan is. In the proposed plan, Benton Harbor High School and the alternative high school, that's 2 high schools, would close as of the 2020-2021 school year. The school board issued the following open letter to Governor Whitmer with an urgent request for her to attend the June 4th meeting in person, which is open to the public and will be held at 6 p.m. in the Benton Harbor High School Student Commons. So I'm going to read this letter because just the context it gives will make you see red. And I started the show by giving Whitmer a little bit of praise for standing up against these anti-abortion clowns, but
now we gotta take it away. Look, human being, there's a lot of duality in life, man. You can do good things at sometimes and then be horrible at some things at sometimes. Whitmore is a good example of that. She says she wants to fix the roads, and she says she wants to help the little man. Well,
hey, little man,
right?
Can you pay like an extra 60 cents a gallon?
Right, like, bruh,
fix these damn roads.
Right. So let's. Yeah.
So yeah, this is some straight up austerity BS here with a little bit of possible corporate collusion on top. This is from their letter that they sent to the governor's office. Hopefully you are aware that representatives from your office, Treasury, and the Department of Education are claiming that on your behalf, a unilateral decision has been made to close Benton Harbor High School in 2020. The board was told by your representatives that a decision was made by your office to intentionally exclude the elected school board trustees and exclude open community input from the decision-making process. Honestly, we are completely shocked and dismayed by this action. We also want to openly confront the many elephants in the room that neither your staff nor the news media have addressed. And man, some of these elephants are some big-ass elephants. Let me read. The land upon which the Benton Harbor High School sits with its athletic fields and adjacent school board properties are the last major undeveloped waterfront properties in Berrien County, Michigan. Wow. Is this just a coincidence, given that your office just told our board representatives on May 24th that your plan to close Benton Harbor High School has major but unnamed supporters in the nearby business community? The draft plan from your office is explicitly a transfer of wealth from an overwhelmingly poor and black community to nearby white, more affluent communities. Under your plan, that transfer of wealth will occur through the loss by Benton Harbor of its school facilities and use of school land, transfer of state funding from Benton Harbor to the adjacent 9 school districts where you plan Benton Harbor students to be redistributed, and loss of jobs for local teachers and staff of all levels. And finally, the contention by representatives of your office that hiring a single staff person to act as a cultural dean to smooth over discomfort that the displaced 700 black students might feel when transported out of their community to predominantly white schools is an appalling insult to our youth and the community. Such insensitivity to the painful history of racial segregation, unsuccessful past desegregation efforts, and continued state-sponsored disinvestment in Benton Harbor calls for a swift and strong response. Oof. Okay, so, again, when we were warning people about like voting for the electable centrist candidate, a lot of people said, "Oh, she's not that bad. She's got some good policies, some of which are ostensibly progressive." The problem is like when we put forward, when you talk about people who are running in the election, there's a difference between people who adopt certain progressive policies in order to. Because they are agile enough politically to understand that the kind of Overton window has shifted. You need to be for certain things to get elected, to get the support of the people, and people who do it from an actual place of like, this is genuinely like what I believe down to the core of my soul, and I want to stand up for the people. I think Abdul was one of those people. Gretchen, I mean, just look at this. I don't need to make an argument here. It's right there, and, frankly, she could change her mind, but it's going to be after, like, public pressure. It's going to be after people, dragging her out socially. And, again, if you had somebody in there who is genuinely progressive, genuinely leftist down to their bones, we wouldn't be dealing with this. Benton Harbor would be dealing with this, where that their school was going to be shut down and sold off to people who want to make more beachfront property.
I mean, Doc, the fact that they said big unnamed interest. They can't even be transparent about who wants to steal this land from the residents of the people around there.
Oh yeah.
It's not like we don't have Nestle taking land away from taking water from us from our Great Lakes at a disproportionate rate that's not positively affecting our communities. But also, okay, you're gonna put businesses in the areas around this undeveloped land that is in the black community. Are those businesses black businesses that will be employing those people from that community? wait.
I'm gonna take a guess and say no.
Is the construction and pollution that will be created from the construction of said and the development of said land? Will that be coming from black companies and black people who are working in those companies? Wait, or how about this? How about you put more money into the schools and infrastructure around there so that the black people can create businesses there? No. Oh, wait. But that wouldn't help out your. That wouldn't help your unnamed donors that you're not talking about in this story. So instead of trying to help the people who's already lived there, and it's amazing. This is undeveloped land that's in an area where people are living. So it sounds like there's already
people are learning.
Yeah. So people are already living and learning there, and they're already they've already been working on in and around that land so they can live their lives and be better. So what you're saying is we are the new colonizers that are coming to your area. Hey, natives that are living there. Hey, y'all got some nice land there. It would be nice if we had some business there as well.
Yeah.
Like the story not only reminds me of like maybe just because of how my mind is set up, and when I started listening going through the story, it really reminded me of, oh man, this is how the Native Americans must have felt when white people came to America and was like, hey, look at all this undeveloped land. Like we live here. What the?
I think it's another thing that's kind of important to bring up too is just to give y'all a little bit more context here. There is a very long and bad history of black activists, black solidarity in the Benton Harbor area getting harassed, policed, and it's an area that people there refer to as like it's owned by Whirlpool. They're hugely powerful there. It's kind of where Fred Upton has his Mount Doom for his his base of support, and they go out of their way to harass, to threaten, to beat down anybody in Benton Harbor that tries to organize. I would really recommend y'all should look up an interview that Lee Camp did with Reverend Pickney. He goes into the details of how his efforts to organize against Whirlpool in the Benton Harbor area literally landed him in prison unjustly for like several years.
We should actually post that interview when we post this video because that interview is amazing. Also, I think the thing that makes me the most angry is that Gretchen, you're supposed to be helping people like this. These people are the type of people who voted for you to get in power. They need you to help them. That is your job, is to help those who needs the help. We're gonna take a school that a historically black school. We're gonna take a school that overwhelming majority of students are black students. We're gonna take a school that has a legacy and history in the community, and you're not gonna help them because your businesses are more important than the people, and you call yourself a Democrat. Look,
she might as well be like, going to the beach with Fred Upton at that point, right? If she doesn't like stand up for the school district.
we threw shade at Gretchen, and Gretchen was better than the Republican that was trying that Fred Upton endorsed.
Yeah,
I get that. I get that. But at the same time, dog, your job is to help the people. These people need your help, and if you are going to care more about the unnamed business interests, which is probably Whirlpool and others, if you're going to care more about them than the actual people, then what are you doing as a governor, man? Seriously.
So I actually wanted to pivot while we're on the topic of school and education. There was this really good article about the Promise that recently dropped, and it really talks about the gap. It is a really good analysis of the gaps left by the Promise, kind of, what has gone well, what hasn't. Now, it's not a complete analysis, but I do want to give kudos to the person who wrote this, that, I think it's really a good look back. We're about 10 plus years into the Promise, and this article is a really good barometer of where it's failed and what still needs to be done. I want to read just a real quick excerpt from it, and then, me and Lawrence actually have a personal stake in this. We both went to Norix, and we're among the first couple of classes that got this scholarship.
Yeah.
The title of the article, so y'all can look it up later, why some students don't go to college even when it's free. And I want to read from real quick. So this 3 stories they brought up. They interviewed a couple people who, didn't take up the Promise for whatever reason. And I think this is really indicative of some of the problems with it. For Rashawn Parker, it was losing his 17-year-old best friend to gun violence, struggling to find the motivation for school. He said, y'all want me to keep on moving when I've got to bury my friend on his birthday. Oh, man, and that is just so real. Like, I grew up in the Edison. Some years were more violent than others, but, we had classmates take bullets, man. Like, that is a real thing in Kalamazoo.
Tim Palmer, man. I wrestled with this young man, and he was supposed to be the wrestling captain the year after we left in 2006. He was supposed to be on the team being the captain after me, and he ended up, because of some BS, catching a bullet. You know what I'm saying? He ended up dying, and it was hard, man. What we don't look at, like, I'm glad that the Promise exists, and I'm glad that people are able to have an opportunity to go to college and have some of that burden taken off of them. What we don't talk about is the lives of people who still need to be lived. Like, if I'm struggling with medical issues, if I'm struggling with trying to put food on the table, if I'm struggling to get gas in a car, the living expense of the area that we live in, it's expensive to be poor. It's expensive to It's expensive to be poor. It's expensive to be to try to go to college, even when you're getting the help that the Promise gave.
I mean, look at something I brought up. Some friends of mine. It's like any other modern Western country. What do they do when you go to college? Not only do you have free college, but they will give you a stipend so that you have room and board. They will give you money for textbooks. That's something that the Promise lacks. And frankly, if you are doing because the Promise pitched itself as we're going to lift people up out of poverty with this Promise. Now, what it did in effect, one of my big complaints about the Promise is that it exacerbated gentrification, because honestly what it did, and this is part of a larger city strategy, pulling in middle class people from Portage, preventing white flight. A friend of mine brought this up, and this really wasn't something that I thought about a whole lot, but I talk about, it's I was the white working class. I was one of the first generations in my family to go to college, but at the same time, the Promise is kind of geared systemically towards people in the white working class to be like, oh, keep your roots here, don't move away to Portage or somewhere else, and because of that, so you've got those things that it's kind of negatively affected people. It's incurred displacement, and that complaint is valid as long as we don't have these concrete supports. If you can't afford textbooks, you can't go to school. If you don't have child care, then you're a teenager and you got pregnant, sorry, you can't go to school. If we still have violence in our neighborhoods because of, and granted, we could go in a whole long spiel about why there's violence in our neighborhoods, but you got that going on, you're not going to be thinking about going to Western or K College or going to even trade school. It's gonna be beyond your reach.
The thing is, let's be honest. If you're taking a full-time class, let's say, it's fine. Let's say you're taking a full-time class. Your average textbooks cost what, 120 something, easy. Forgetting the fact that half the country makes less than $30,000 a year. I think the average income in Kalamazoo is around $30,000. I don't even think it's there. For most people, they're going to have to work a full-time job and then try to have a full course load, which I think that was also part of the thing about the Promise. I don't think that it fully covered you if you wasn't a full-time student. Well, if you don't have money for everything else, then you may not be able to survive trying to go to college. And especially if you're going to be staying on campus and room and board and all those things are excessively expensive. They're expensive because the colleges is putting that burden on the students and on the parents. And a lot of people are not blessed or financially to do that. The thing that with all of its good intentions, there are still holes where people can slip through. And I want the Promise to go further, but this is also another reason why we need universal free college and tuition. This is also another reason why we need universal health care. This is also another reason why we need a $15 minimum wage. You are not going to be able to pay for your books and all your books, transportation, and all this, and all the things that you will need to survive if you're making less than $10 an hour. And I think a majority of Americans in Kalamazoo, a majority of people in Kalamazoo, are making $10 or less. Like, there are places where you can make more. But
I think a lot of us activists, both like anti-racist and black organizers and Latinx organizers in town get flack for calling it a gentrification tool. Some people even say like, oh, well, that's like kind of conspiracy theory thinking. And I want to make it very clear. This is the actual net effect. This is what happens when you have this scholarship program without having those concrete supports. It will bring people into the town, middle-class people who want that free college, and it will raise property values, and it will displace low-income black and Latinx residents primarily,
and also poor white people,
and also poor white people.
We also have to remember a majority of people who are disenfranchised. Outside of minority communities are also poor white people.
Oh yeah, and like, this isn't to throw shade at the people who run the Promise. Von Washington and all them, they do really good work.
I think the Promise is fantastic. But there are still social things that needs to change for it to be much more effective.
Exactly. I think this article was really eye-opening, and the city needs to step up and do more to offer these resources. We got this foundation, which, people like Mayor Hopewell have told me it's like in the same vein. It's like, well, why isn't it being used to solve some of these issues, Also, fundamentally, I think, I'm glad you brought the national scope into it, because, keep in mind, the only reason we even need a Promise at all is because we've had decades and decades of neoliberalism and austerity that has just gutted public funding for universities. It literally used to be that you could, go work a summer at Dairy Queen and, there's your college tuition,
That is not how this works nowadays.
No, that's not at all.
No, I said it a little while ago, and I'm gonna reiterate it. Your books by themselves is gonna cost maybe an entire paycheck.
Yeah.
Easy,
Yeah.
easy an entire
Yeah.
paycheck.
And just to correct you a little bit, this was back in 2006 dollars. I think on average I was spending about $400 a semester for textbooks. So thank goodness I got all this, like the grants and stuff. But man, yeah, most regular people, like, you can't afford that. But no. All right, so I don't know. Do you have anything else to add on the story before maybe go to another quick break?
We can take a quick break. I'm good.
Take a quick break. Come back. We got more to talk about. This is a Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Voting is important. From deciding Kalamazoo's best drunk food to picking the fan favorite for Wider's Battle of the Bands, voting allows people to voice their opinions and change their world. To vote for offices such as mayors, senators, and the president takes a little more than a link to a Google Forms survey. Before you vote, you have to register. This can be done in person, by mail, and in many states, online. For more information, you can point your favorite web browser to vote.gov.
Hello, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, let's go international. I wanted to do just a couple of quick hits on Brazil. Why? I think it's really important to talk about, if you are not super aware, Jair Bolsanaro is the president there. And two things happened. That's actually some good news. And with, the resurgence of global fascism, I think it's important to point out where we're getting certain victories. So one thing that happened, a majority in Brazil's Supreme Court voted in favor of making homophobia and transphobia crimes. Now, this is particularly good when you compare it. Keep in mind the context. Bolsonaro is homophobic and transphobic AF. This is a guy who talked about how he'd rather have a dead son or a gay son. Last month, he was heavily criticized for saying Brazil should not become a quote-unquote gay tourism paradise. Yeah. Yep. Too late.
Too late.
Also, really good news for indigenous organizers. This guy's rhetoric before he got elected, he was advocating overt genocide. He was like, take their land. If they don't like it, too bad. Well, either they can become happy capitalists like us, or so. Another thing. So again, kudos to Brazil's lower house of Congress. They decided. They put decision. They axed Bolsonaro's proposal to move decisions on indigenous land claims in the hands of the Ministry of Agriculture. So the chamber voted late Wednesday to restore land delineation decisions to the National Indigenous Affairs Agency, which will also be placed under the Ministry of Justice. And again, this is a guy who said that he wanted to assimilate Brazil's 800,000 indigenous people into Brazilian society and open reservation lands to commercial agricultural mining, even in the Amazon rainforest. So again, good things happening in Brazil, and I think it goes to show, even in these countries where these outright fascists have grown power, there's still a lot of room for resistance, not only inside the chambers of government, but also the people as well. Again, this is, we talk when we do these stories about how, Supreme Courts or Congresses have made a certain decision, please keep in mind, it's always like it's the people power, the people pressure that is causing these decisions to happen. So even in places like Brazil, where these super reactionary right-wingers get into power, there's still a lot of room for good news and resistance, and some victories. So, good for them. Woo.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
I mean, dog, I'm still laughing about him not wanting Brazil to be a gay tourism place. I'm like, come on, bro.
Y'all.
Let me explain. let me holler at him for a second. I'm just saying that, bruh, it's Brazil. It does not matter if you are gay, straight, or whatever. It's Brazil.
No amount of right wing homophobic rhetoric will make it not Brazil.
Right. It's Brazil. Jesus wants a hug. Okay. No. So all I'm saying is that it does not matter. It does not matter what you identify as, what your sexual orientation is. You want to go to Brazil. Brazil is a place where you want to go. Mm-hmm. I want one day that's on my bucket list. Yes, Brazil is a place where I want to visit just because it's Brazil. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no other reason. No, actually, no. There are a few other reasons. We're not gonna get into that.
Well, hopefully in a few years, when some transgender indigenous activists unseats Jair Bolsanaro as president, we can all go down. We'll take a big group trip. Me and all the co-hosts.
Oh God, yeah. I am all for that smoke. I want all that smoke all at the same time. There was a couple of other stories that I know that we wanted to talk about.
Oh yeah, dive on in.
We have to. I don't know if you saw it, but CNN being confused about what journalism is when it comes to Julian Assange.
Oh, okay. This is a big can of worms. Yeah, I did want to talk about this.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
Let's speak on it.
I mean, like, well, okay. So I guess I'll say
The guy. Okay, so the guy with the. Sorry to interrupt. The guy with the best porn star name on planet Earth, Jake Tapper, was having a editorial with one of their other contributors talking about Julian Assange, talking about how America has decided to basically add on charges. I think 17 other charges to the other charges that Julian Assange and others are being accused of. Mostly him doing what a journalist is supposed to do when you have an asset and you're getting information about war crimes that a government's doing. And the truth-telling organization of CNN didn't understand that, you're supposed to be an advocate for the truth when you're telling the news. Like for some reason, that was a confusing concept for a news organization.
Yeah. Man, leave it to CNN to always have the wrong take.
What?
I will actually give some credit to well, I guess first of all, don't you just hate it? I feel like, me and Lawrence, like us leftists, us socialists, like we've been talking about the Assange issue for the last 3 years, and it always makes me feel like a prophet of doom. I'm just like, I told you this is going to happen. I told you. We told you.
We said that they are going to be coming after journalists for doing the act of journalism.
Yes.
And we talked about how this is an attack on our First Amendment. This is Trump saying mean things. Okay, Trump saying that the news is the enemy of the people, that's problematic, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Destroying our First Amendment constitutional rights that know what war crimes our country is doing with our tax dollars and in our name, that is what journalists is supposed to be talking about. And criminalizing that is an attack on our First Amendment.
Oh, yeah.
Because that means you would have to also criminalize, again, we've gone over this, but you will have to criminalize the people who printed the Panama Papers. You'll have to criminalize people who the New York Times
published the Pentagon Papers.
Pentagon Papers.
Yeah.
Every time they leaked about stuff that was going on with Donald Trump in this administration, every one of those whistleblowers, you would have, and every one of those whistleblowers and news organizations that ran with the story, you would have to lock them up too.
And now I do want to go a little bit into the nuts and bolts of that. Although I will say, what's kind of shocking to me, rightfully, MSNBC, at least some of their commentators have been having a right take on this. So more establishment papers like WAPO and the New York Times, because they have intelligently they have understood the way that this prosecution is going forward is a threat to journalism in general. Even, and I kid you not, I don't have the clip pulled up, but look it up. Rachel, everything bad that happened in 2016 is because of Russian collusion. Maddow did a segment on a recent episode talking about how, charging Julian Assange under the Espionage Act is a threat to journalists everywhere. So have people at New York Times, WAPO, etc. And I want to explain a little bit of the reason why. And by the way, I would recommend the Intercepted podcast. The episode that they dropped today goes into very extensive detail about this. But here's how this functions. So here's something that's actually a little weird about it. By charging Julian Assange under the Espionage Act, it actually makes it harder, more difficult for the United States government to extradite him. Unless, of course, the U.S. government has an ulterior motive. What is that ulterior motive? If you look at the actual indictment that they're trying to use to indict Julian Assange under the Espionage Act, all the things that they're accusing him of are typical journalistic best practices when you have a source who has access to classified information. They are de facto, it is basically trying to use this indictment, whether it goes forward or not, to basically warn outlets like the New York Times, outlets like the Washington Post, and so on and so forth say, if you engage in these common practices, if you commit the crime of journalism, we're trying to go after Assange. We can't get to him, but we can go after you, and we are prepared to do that. And to give a little bit of credit to the Obama administration, even though, you know, they broke the record for prosecuting whistleblowers. Trump's about to break that record pretty soon. Oh, yeah. But they said they were not going to follow. They were not going to try to prosecute Assange under this act, because they said, you know, basically if we do that, we'd have to prosecute anybody who publishes classified information, such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera. And that was not something they were prepared to do. Of course, you know, the Trump administration doesn't give an F about the First Amendment, so no.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The problem that we have here is not that. The problem that we had, especially with the CNN video with the guy with the best porn star name ever, is that we have a news media organization, CNN, also use WikiLeaks to cover stories.
Exactly.
So that means
they all did before they all decided to hate WikiLeaks.
Yeah, no, but this is the thing. If you do not speak out against this, and Trump has said multiple times that, and has shown that he wants to open up libel laws to go after media organizations that has cracked jokes about him. He sued Bill Maher for a joke. He's literally called the press the enemy of the people and called them fake news. He's attacked the First Amendment literally with this act. If CNN does not realize that they are next, especially since they wanted people to feel bad for them about Jim Acosta, if you don't think that Trump will not come after you next, you are kidding yourself.
Listen to your centrist comrades, folks. I mean, Rachel Maddow's trying to warn you. Gosh,
when Rachel Maddow has taken time off of Russiagate to talk about how freedom of the press is in danger, then we're in danger. And Rachel Maddow,
red alert.
like dog, and Rachel in Media Matters, the study about Rachel Maddow's show over the last year, and talked about how much he talked about Russiagate in comparison to all other news stories. Like, all other news stories combined on her show did not equal, I think, a tenth of her coverage that she did a tenth of the coverage that she put into Russiagate. And I laughed so hard, and I laughed and cried, because that means Yemen, that means the genocide of Yemen, the genocide in Myanmar, how Flint still doesn't have clean drinking water, how we've had multiple stories of black people being shot by the police, the whole Eric Gardner thing that's still going on right now, with the police chief saying Eric Gardner's death wasn't a big deal, and the police officer that did choke him saying that he tried to save his life by not he saved his life by not having Eric Gardner fall through the glass window. And that was the stretch that they're using right now in court to say that he's like, I'm like, all of these other relevant stories, and her news coverage has been nothing but Russiagate. And I'm sitting here like, Rachel Maddow and her most avid fans. I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong with being a fan of Rachel Maddow. I used to be a fan of Rachel Maddow for a while.
Well, she used to do good work. I mean, that's the sad thing.
Yeah.
Glenn Greenwald talks about this a lot. It's like, we used to be friends. She used to be a great journalist, and then she was a great journalist, and then the same thing that happened. This is my opinion. They had the same conversation with Rachel Maddow that they had with Cenk Uygur and Ed Schultz and Dylan Radigan and Melissa Harris Perry
and all the other progressives that was on MSNBC, they the Psycho and all of them, Crystal Ball, Torre.
Yep.
That's when I used to watch MSNBC heavily, and that's when Joy Reid was kind of a progressive. And that's when I was like, all right, dog, I want to do this. I want to speak truth to power like these people. Now, when you look at CNN, they're all gone.
Yeah,
I mean, not CNN, MSNBC.
That conversation went one of two ways. Either
it was like, we like the fact that you keep going after this. You keep going after Trump with this garbage. Keep doing that. Don't cover no real stuff.
Another good example, Chris Hayes. I'd recommend his book, Twilight of the Elites. But it's amazing to think like this is a guy he literally writes in the book about what ended up happening to him. He's like, a lot of people will go into the establishment thinking they can change it, but they end up becoming part and parcel of that establishment, which is literally what happened to him at MSNBC.
Which is still happening to him now.
Yeah.
Which is still happening to him now. Like there was one, I think he talked about the Yemen conflict for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
He has an hour-long show. 45 minutes into his hour-long show, he talked about Yemen for like 2 minutes and then stopped talking about it. And that was all the time he was allowed to talk about it.
Yep.
And I'm sitting here like, it's your show.
Yeah.
It's your show. Now, look, I understand that in a multinational corporation, you have producers and curators. There's been a bunch of stories about how Al Sharpton didn't read any of the stuff that was put before him. He was just reading off the teleprompter. But this is the reason why I love that we do our show our way. We talk about the stories that we care about. And dog, man, I'm thankful for shows like Redacted Tonight and Democracy Now, Young Turks and others, and then in us how we do our thing, because dog, there's no other station that's going to talk about what's going on with Benton Harbor. We're not gonna you'll hear Channel 3 talk about Benton Harbor and like the summary and outline of it, but they won't go into a deep dive of
they won't do the analysis and they really can't either. They're
not designed to.
They're not designed to. Unless it's some guy named Boris who wants to stand Donald Trump for 5 minutes because they're part of Sinclair Broadcasting.
Dog, I don't understand these 5-minute rants discussing how Trump is great on Channel 3. I don't get it. Like, we need to do a segment. Like we're gonna have to do a segment. I'm saying this now. We're gonna have to do a segment and put it on YouTube. Every time he does one of these 5-minute rants, we debunk everything he's saying. like we have to do like the PragerU videos and I said I was gonna do this, especially when I get my editing skills up. I'm just gonna take every one of these PragerU videos and I'm just gonna debunk them.
Yeah.
And then the other story that I wanted to talk about, because I know we ain't got a lot of time.
Yeah.
Did you see Dr. Cornel West on
Before, let me just cap off the Assange thing real quick. Okay, I just want to say, this is what we've been warning about, and yep, it's here. DEFCON 10. This is it, because effectively these indictments against Assange, it is designed to scare the hell out of establishment media and be like, do not publish leaks, do not publish leaks. And if one of these outlets should have the bravery to still do so, they will try to come at them with the same espionage charge. So we in the end game, folks. And one last thing. If it becomes a crime or not to publish government secrets and expose U.S. war crimes, I'm just telling y'all this right now. I am always gonna be game. I don't care. I'm a millennial. I don't give a f. Nuclear weapons or climate change are gonna kill me anyway. So might as well do something important. Drop some truth bombs.
Yeah.
So this is the Hoodrat Strategist. We got some evidence of war crimes. All right. So, Lawrence, go ahead. I know you had a few more things you want to talk about in this last 10 minutes we got.
Okay. The other story that I wanted to talk about, it's not even a story, dog. It's It wasn't even. It's not even a story, dog. It's not even. It's worth talking about because it's funny. We both love Dr. Cornel West. We think Dr. Cornel West is awesome.
He is one of my favorite activists in the country.
Oh man, absolutely. Dr. Cornel West went on Laura Ingram's show and he debated the right-wing talking point robot Candace Owens, and he destroyed their talking points with surgical precision. Like it wasn't even. It was a master class.
Cornel West destroys the right wing.
Doug, it was a master class of how do you debunk garbage, like just straight garbage. The thing that made me laugh about the interview was that they were trying to give Donald Trump now again. This is fair. They're giving Donald Trump credit on communing sentences for people who did not deserve it. Now, for those who also remember, he's been commuting sentences because of different activists around the country, bringing up tension about those who have been wronged by our system. A very famous case of that is when he had Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian met with the president to get a mother that was wrongly accused out of jail. He's commuted some other sentences. He has not commuted as many sentences as Obama did in his last term, but he has been doing so, and it's small nuggets in a broader scale of criminal justice, of prison and the prison industrial complex, and the criminal justice system, and to give Trump credits for the small nuggets that he did when you have this giant mountain of the prison industrial system, the criminal justice system, and the injustice of it, and the corporations that benefit from it, that donate to both the Democrat and Republican Party, and how those nuances need to be discussed, and how it is disgusting, and it is just weak sauce to try to give Trump this little bit of credit for doing the right thing in a decades-long system of injustice in this country. And he broke it down in such an elegant way, and I encourage people to watch it, because Candace and Laura Ingraham both just went to partisan talking points, and they were not addressing the issues, and then he would just hit them with truth bombs and body bags. Like he was just coming off the top rope with facts, and it was just amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And I encourage people to watch it. That conversation is worth watching if you want to see a masterclass of a good faith actor, someone who actually cares about these issues, versus people who are just trolling. Yeah, that was one of my other stories. I have a few others, but that was the only other one I wanted to talk about. Y'all need to see that. Y'all need to see that interview.
Oh yeah, that's some good stuff. I guess I do have a couple of quick hits. So I want to let you know, Michigan Supreme Court. Like this back and forth on the whole gerrymandering thing is really agonizing. But they put on hold Friday a lower court's order that Michigan lawmakers redraw state and congressional political districts and hold special elections in 2020 to fix illegal gerrymandering by Republicans. In the one-paragraph order, the High Court delayed the Michigan ruling until it can decide high-profile redistricting cases out of North Carolina and Maryland. A ruling in those cases is expected in June. The court also stayed a redistricting case in Ohio in a separate order. So again, that was the U.S. Supreme Court. Again, we've got a majority right-wing makeup on that court. And it's, the local Michigan GOP, it's like they got an assist. They got an assist from the U.S. Supreme Court. And, while I guess it's one could say it's like, well, maybe that's a genuine thing. They want to like decide all of these cases at once. Or, you know, I mean, it's hypocritical, though. A lot of these Republican judges, you know, were chosen specifically because they believe in states' rights. They believe in states' individual rights to make their own decisions. So when a lower Michigan court decides, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z, they step and say, it's like, no, y'all don't know what you're talking about. We need to come in and tell you what to do.
Again, look, folks, and this is the thing. This is the thing about the whole states' rights issue, especially when right-wingers say it. I need for everybody to remember the whole states' rights things comes from the Civil War, and they were talking about the states' right. They would always use it as a way to sugarcoat their real intentions. During the Civil War, states' rights were the right to have slaves. During Reconstruction and the Civil Rights era, it was states' rights to segregate, to discriminate based on race. And now states' rights is to, you know, take away autonomy, to take away rights from women and everyone, because the circle of liberty has expanded too far for people who are in power.
Yep, I mean, that's exactly right. And, you know, it'll be really interesting to see how the Supreme Court plays politics with us and these other states, because, you know, it's going to make a really huge difference if we can redraw these district lines before the next election, or if we can't, if we have to wait until 2022. And, you know, I will say originally that was kind of under the letter of the law with the Voters Not Politicians effort. It wasn't originally going to go into effect until 2022. But, again, a lower court in Michigan, the Michigan Supreme Court, found it unconstitutional, and that these district lines were designed to disproportionately benefit Republicans. So it's going to make all the difference in the world about whether they can use this rigged electoral map again in 2020, or if we're going to have to wait until 2022 for at least a little bit of fairness in those electoral maps.
Well, all I know is that if the primaries are anything of the sort, the primaries in the general are any indication of 2016 and 2018 are any indication of the future, the reason why they're doing this is because they see that the state is going more blue. The state's always supposed to be a swing state, even though in 2016 it went for Trump. We want progressive policies in the state of Michigan. So they're doing a power grab because they don't have a choice. They cannot debate their ideas in the free market of ideas, so they have to cheat.
Yep, exactly right. And, you know, that ties into, you know, all of the voter suppression we see targeted at, black voters, Latinx voters. All of that is an effort to prevent us from having an actual reflection of what the electorate believes. And again, you know, if everybody in America who could vote, and that vote was counted, the Republican Party would basically be wiped out. Yeah. It really would. It would become like a minor third party, and then it would probably be like a splintering. And you know, this has happened in American history before, where you'd maybe have like the Democrats would remain as a center-left party, and then maybe a progressive party, or maybe the DSA would form its own political party. I mean, that's a lot of speculation. But suffice to say, if the electoral maps actually reflected what Americans believe, the modern Republican Party would not exist as we know it.
Yeah, too much.
All right.
I agree.
And I think on that thought, it's about 8 o'clock. I want to thank y'all for listening. This has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Until next week, keep on fighting for that revolution solution. And remember, we post all of our episodes on our YouTube page. You can also follow our Facebook page in order to keep track of those. Till next week, keep fighting.